Hello, everyone. Welcome to our middle of year linguistic accommodations and designated supports for state testing. Say that fast 3 times. These slides were provided by Dr. Grace Del Valle. She is the director of LPAC and the Multilingual Center, and she's basically the trainee that answers all the questions related to LPAC. Any emergent bilingual student gets 3 types of accommodations. They get designated supports. These are given during tests for students who qualify. They must be documented in LPAC. Instructional accommodations. These are given in class. They precede and justify designated supports and testing. And accessibility features. These are available for all students, and these do not need to be documented. Accessibility features are available for all students that are going to be taking the STAR test. These include things that may be provided for students based on their needs, available to any student who regularly benefits from the use of the procedures or material during instruction. So these include things such as bilingual dictionary, small group, reminders to stay on task, translating test directions, directions only, reading assistance for 3rd grade math, reading test aloud to self, etc. So what are linguistic accommodations and designated supports? Linguistic accommodations, think of your day-to-day accommodations that you are using with your students so that they can access the English language. These are used in the classroom to help students access the content. They are required by the ELPs. They support learning of both subject matter and English. They are to be documented by all teachers of emergent bilinguals at the beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. Are monitored and adjusted by teachers as students learn more English. Designated supports are going to be specifically what you are giving students to help them test in either their language, would be a designated support, or the English language. So these should be individualized to address the specific needs of each student, are not changes to the performance criteria or the content. They're not intended to provide advantage to any student, should not be provided to a student without evidence of effectiveness from year to year. Both should be evaluated regularly to determine the effectiveness and to help plan the accommodations the student needs each year. When you are documenting your linguistic accommodations and designated supports in Frontline V3, this is basically the menu that you will see. So for your linguistic accommodations, you're going to get your classroom instructional day-to-day accommodations such as peer and native language support, gestures for added emphasis, visuals, and so on. Designated supports that you can assign to your students that are taking the English STAR test are oral admin and content language support. To relate content language supports in the classroom, they gave us a correlation of what a content and language support could look like in the classroom that you could transfer over to testing. So, for example, using dictionaries or thesaurus, the teacher isolates specific information to focus the student on core concept being taught, so chunking, simplifying difficult vocabulary. This would be an example of content support. When you are assigning your STAR designated support, please ensure that decisions are made on individual student basis, and we're doing this closer to testing, so middle of year. Consider students' need for second language acquisition support, whether the student is using routinely provided the accommodation and instruction and testing, and of course coordinate with your co-teacher so that you guys may make an informed decision together. Remember that whenever you are assigning a designated support, an LPAC accommodation for state testing, students must be using the accommodation routinely, independently, and effectively. So I'll show you an example of what these accommodations will look like on their state assessment through the Cambium website. Once you're on the website, you just scroll down and you click on the online practice test, and you're going to do the practice test login. Continuous guest session. And then I'm just going to show you what oral admin looks like, as well as content and language supports. So I chose 3rd grade. Let's go do a third grade reading test. I'm going to click on the content language support. The practice test only allows the auto text to speech, so that means that it's just going to read the whole thing. Whenever you select read all for students, it's just going to directly read the instructions as well as the question and then the answer choices without stopping. But when you select read parts, students are able to choose what part of the text they want read, meaning just the question and instructions. For language support, so students are going to get some words that are going to be boxed out. They're able to click on it, and it's going to give them, sometimes it's going to give them a definition. Other times it might give them a picture to go along with that. But that's what a content and language support would look like. The accessibility features that everybody gets is things such as a dictionary. So everybody automatically gets a dictionary embedded, the sticky notes that they can use to take notes, line reader, so that way they can kind of highlight and read line by line so they don't get super lost. So again, these are accessibility features and language and content supports that you guys can. Accessibility features are automatically assigned to them, but language support features or accommodations are the ones that you are choosing for them. So whenever you're assigning an LPAC accommodation, either oral admin or content and language supports, make sure that your students are practicing them in the state assessment, Texas State Assessment website, so that they are getting familiar with them. Lastly, reminder on reclassification. So the goal is for the emergent bilingual students is to reclassify. That means that they are receiving high scores, advanced high composite scores, and TELPAs along with their STAR test. It used to be where students would not qualify to reclassify if they received any accommodations, but that's no longer the case. So essentially, a student can receive accommodations on their STAR test and still be able to reclassify, or as we used to say, exit the bilingual program, or no longer be considered a limited proficient English proficient student. This year, before we input our accommodations into Frontline B3, we are going to complete a Bergen LPAC Start accommodation spreadsheet. So here is where you're essentially just going to choose the test type. So that means just the test language. Remember that if your student is testing in Spanish through LPAC, they do not receive any accommodations. However, they can receive them through either MTSS, SPED, or 504. 6th grade does not test in Spanish at all, so all of your tests will automatically be set to English. However, you are able to assign, after you and your co-teacher have completed the spreadsheet that is showing the language of testing along with accommodations, please make sure that you are coming into Frontline, and the linguistic accommodations should have been updated by now by the reading teacher, but the designated supports, each of you will actually do your own. I just suggest that you guys do them together side by side, so that way you can input both of the accommodations and the language of testing. So for linguistic accommodations, you're going to go to your Frontline B3 and you're going to put your instructional accommodations. For state test accommodations, start accommodations, you're going to go to screen 8 and you're going to put your LPAC state assessment review. If you need instructions on how to do that, those are also linked here. When you are putting your Frontline designated supports, this is what it's going to look like. So you're going to put your language of testing for 3rd through 5th grade. You're just going to click STAR, and then you're going to click, either STAR Spanish or STAR is the most appropriate for both RLA Math and for 5th grade Science. And then you're going to select your accommodations. For RLA and Math, remember that even if you're not assigning any accommodations, you must select none needed, so that they know that they're not going to receive any accommodations. So important dates for you to keep in mind is this training, which I am required to do by January 23rd, which is the end of this week. The campus accommodation spreadsheet is going to be due January 30th. That is going to be next Friday. So about a week from now. That way you have time to think about the accommodations and language of testing that you've assigned. And if you still want to change something, you're able to change it by then. After that, you will go ahead and enter the accommodations in Frontline V3. Those will be due by February 6th. Now, by February 6th, you need to be certain 100% of what language of testing you're assigning, as well as what accommodations, because I will not be able to change those accommodations once we LPAC the students. When we have an LPAC meeting, that means that I have to bring in our parent, LPAC parent, as well as our LPAC admin. So to change one student of language of testing or accommodations, it requires having a whole separate meeting. So we want to make sure that we're certain what accommodations we're assigning to our students, as well as language of testing. Remember that you are going to select the language of testing. If applicable, you can choose Spanish. 6th grade will choose only English. If you're choosing the language of testing as Spanish, you will not be able to assign any LPAC accommodations, so you will have to select none needed. If you're assigning testing of language as English, you may assign accommodations, or you can also choose not needed. And then make sure that each teacher signs for their their content area test. Thank you guys so very much for all of your hard work. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.